Hello, everyone, and welcome to Openly Aging with Allison, where we talk about getting older with intention, education, with a strong focus on keeping control and independence as we age. Today, we're diving into something that doesn't get nearly enough attention: the power of connection as we age. In fact, in May of 2023, the US Surgeon General issued an advisory declaring social isolation and loneliness as a public health epidemic. He compared the health risk to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. That's how serious he is. That's how serious this is, and he is. But here's the thing: we're not powerless. One of the best ways to stay connected, especially after retirement, is through volunteering. It gives us purpose, community, and a reason to keep showing up. That's why I'm so excited to have Amanda Stoen with us today. She is the program manager with AmeriCorps Seniors RSVP Program. This is a nationwide effort helping older adults give back while staying connected to the world around them. So, welcome, Amanda. We're so excited you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic
Great.
today.
Yeah, very important topic.
Hmm.
So let's start. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this world of AmeriCorps RSVP.
Um, well, it's a quite a different journey, I guess. I started out my career in marketing advertising world. Then, when we were starting a family, I also helped start a preschool. So I was the director of the school for about 15 years. And ironically, we did focus a lot on connection and that within early childhood development. And so not only did I learn that the importance of it on the early childhood side, but it's really just it's a human need that it doesn't stop. We know that the brain is a social organ, that we are meant to be in community together. So whether you are 4 years old, 44 years old, or 84 years old, um, it is important to have connections. We don't need a lot of connections, but we need good quality connections. And being able to be in community with one another is really important um, for quality of life.
I love that. Yeah. So how did you find AmeriCorps? Yeah.
So, so last fall, I started here at the Triangle Nonprofit and Volunteer Leadership Center, um, working as the program manager. So I've taken a lot of my skills, just organization and leadership and things, with this position. Um, and at the same time, now I'm on the flip side learning to work with older adults and that background. And it's been exciting because there's so many similarities, again, with the importance of social connection and volunteering. We also use a lot of volunteers at our program. So I've just continued to learn. I feel like I'm a lifelong learner and have been diving into that and learn podcasts or webinars or different things to grow in my role. And I've also learned a lot from the different nonprofits we worked with and the volunteers. I love to hear their stories about why they volunteer, what got them into volunteering, and how it's kept them going as
Mhm.
aging adults.
Yeah. So you're like a lifelong human connector. You just really see the power in it, which is amazing because that is one of the most important things, as you said.
I
So,
do. I do. I
yeah.
think it's important to be connected to one another.
So, from your experience with what you see with the AmeriCorps RSVP program, how do you see where isolation shows up with aging individuals?
Yes. So, especially coming out of the pandemic, I know we're still
Mhm.
talking about that 5 years later. The pandemic really highlighted a few things with aging adults. Social isolation was one of them, food insecurity another, and these are nationwide issues, not just what you may see in your local community. Um, when families were having to isolate from one another, um, we saw it on the early childhood side. Children were not hanging out with their grandparents. So there were those missing connections and components that you usually see with beginnings of life and the beginning of a child's life. But due to the nature of COVID and things that were happening, children weren't interacting with their grandparents, neighbors, that kind of thing. And so grandparents, those on the older end, were isolated because they were also at higher risk for COVID and the different side effects and things. So um, people were not connecting with each other. They weren't even trying, if they were volunteering before, those opportunities either stopped or greatly decreased or were in a more remote, isolated type of opportunity. So, as we've been coming out of COVID and figuring out life again, and life is different, um, we are seeing the need to connect with each other, whether it is offering some remote opportunities. Now, a lot of people, we know how to do virtual connections through different types of formats, platforms, and things to, or even phone calls, just checking in, having a phone call with different people. There are volunteer opportunities for that for people that want to connect with others and people that need that connection.
So really even though there was a lull in the connection piece during COVID, what's come out of it, if we're going to stay optimistic, is probably a better understanding of the technology on how
Mm-hmm.
to be connected. And so there's more volunteer opportunities for aging individuals on that side of things as well than there was
Mm-hmm.
before. And so
Yeah.
reconnecting back into volunteering, and why do you think the social connection tends to decline for people as they age? What are some of those factors that you see?
I think once I think for some groups of people, their career has been their identity.
Yes.
And when they leave that career, who are they? Whether they volunteered through their employment or not, some corporations have that. They have to figure out what their plan is, and they may not have had one. Um, so I'm sorry,
That's such a good
pausing.
point.
I forgot your question.
That's okay. All right, we're going to pause.
Or if you can just tell me what your question
Yep.
was so I can,
I had to remember what
yeah.
my question was. Okay, hold on. Why do you think social connection tends to decline for people as they age? And I'm going to start.
And then additionally, um, I think if we are not connected to our employment anymore, um, it is just harder to figure out where to go in the community. Now we have so much free time. It's easy to waste that time trying to figure out what to do with it. You have to really put together a schedule, a routine, and that can be hard. You may
I
not have
love
really
that
had to do
point.
that before.
Yeah, I love that point because I got my degree in something called therapeutic recreation. So all those CTRSs out there, high five, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it was basically learning how to help people socialize and in a therapeutic way, social engagement in a therapeutic way, recreate. And I love how you mentioned the work sometimes becomes somebody's identity. And a lot of times, those people are what we call purposeful recreators. They like a job, they like to have a reason, they want to go and do a specific job, and that's how they find their recreation. And a lot of times, those are the people when they retire that they do decline quicker, or they don't, like you said, know how to embrace this next chapter because they're seeing all the social recreators out there going to the book clubs, going to do bingo, going to the senior center. And for them, they can't relate to that kind of
Mm-hmm.
recreation. And
Mm-hmm.
so finding uh, the AmeriCorps RSVP program or other very purposeful or recreation where it really has, you're checking in, you're checking out is a great way for those type of people to get that social engagement. You naturally meet people just like you do at work and you do it on a schedule. So I love that you mentioned that because that is a very big piece of it. Is there any other things you see as somebody ages on why their social connection um, may kind of
Well,
decline?
sometimes too, we have a physical or mental reason that
Hmm.
we have to stop working or work in a uh, lesser capacity or something, but our body or our mind just starts working against us.
Yeah.
Um, and there are still volunteer opportunities for people who may not be able to get out as easily as they used to, or their cognitive decline may be in some affecting them in some ways, but at the same time, they can still help pack boxes. They can still help do some physical activity things, which is also good for the body to keep moving, keep that body moving. So, um,
Yeah, those are great
yeah,
options. So, how does volunteering address some of the emotional and social needs of an aging individual?
uh, it it keeps them active. Volunteering in your community, you have a purpose. You are helping students with tutoring. You are helping address food insecurity by packing boxes or delivering meals. You are working and just working with people,
Mhm.
so that you're staying socially engaged, which helps improve your mental and your physical health. And it's also a way to build new relationships with people. I've read that once you leave your work friends, it can be very difficult to stay in community with them. Your identity and you've had a purpose to be together. And once you leave or a group of you leaves, it's harder to get together,
Yeah.
while very important. So building new relationships with people in a new chapter of your life, it doesn't mean those relationships should go away or can't be maintained, but we can have new ones and build new ones.
And that's
um,
so good for cognition too.
it really is, and
Yeah.
that is the feedback I've received when I talk with volunteers are, and they didn't expect that they have built relationships with people where they're in a support network themselves. They look forward to going to volunteer to see these same folks that they volunteer with week in and week out. And these volunteers have helped each other navigate personal issues or things they've struggled with, that they can be a support network for each other while they are also supporting an incredible organization to address food insecurity or education or different things.
Yeah. Common goal, common,
Mm-hmm.
common cause, if you
Mm-hmm.
will.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have maybe a story you could tell us about somebody who, through volunteering, either came back to you and it really was life changing, or just how it was a good example of how it help them become more emotionally or socially engaged?
Yeah, I interviewed one volunteer who spends part of her time here locally and then part of her time back where she is from. So she's back and forth a few months at a time at each place. And when she's here, she had to build a whole network of friends and community. And she did that partly through volunteering. And as she was navigating some challenges in her personal life, she talked about how the volunteers were able to help her. Some of the volunteers were able to help her navigate some of these challenges. And that just helped her get through it. So not only was she taking time, sometimes we need to step away from our challenge and get our
Hmm.
mind on something else, but she was doing that, but able to deal with her issues and confide in some people through
Hmm.
volunteering that she had built trusting relationships with, so she could be vulnerable. That's not to say you can do that at every time you volunteer. When you walk in on day one, you have to build that trust with each
And that's
other.
part of what the
Yes.
program promotes is,
Mm-hmm.
really having a structured volunteer
Yes.
job, if you will. And
Right.
so it keeps people coming back and
Mm-hmm.
keeps people forming
And
relationships.
so whether these nonprofits have, some on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. These are the things that they do. And some schedule certain times of the month when they have volunteer needs. It just depends on the organization and what their mission is and what their goals are. And some have a need to have volunteers 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about the AmeriCorps RSVP program, exactly the mission, how it's run. I know it's nationwide. So give us a little bit more about that program.
Sure. So, yes, the AmeriCorps Seniors RSVP program is administered on a federal level, and then it's managed locally at the community level. So, we manage the program here for Durham County, here in North Carolina. The mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic participation through service and volunteering. So it is the largest volunteer service network in the country. So AmeriCorps does nationwide volunteering, like the Peace Corps does international volunteering type work. So AmeriCorps Seniors has been around for just about 50 years in some capacity. It's changed names over the years, but has right now fallen under the umbrella of AmeriCorps. So this program leverages skills, experience, expertise of adults that are 55 and older to meet the needs of the local communities in various capacities. So a few of the areas our particular goals address are dealing with food insecurity. So we work with Meals on Wheels, we work with other food pantries locally, food banks. We address K through 12 education through tutoring, so providing tutoring services for elementary, mostly elementary, some middle and high school as well, and capacity building services within nonprofits. So nonprofits looking to support them with systems development, offering trainings, volunteer management, resource development. So when nonprofits get started, or most nonprofits are quite small, they don't have a whole HR department. They have the executive director and they have hopefully some staff. It just depends. They need volunteers. They rely on volunteers.
Especially those professional volunteers who
Yes.
probably have just left a 30-year career
Yes. Yes. And
in a
so
certain segment of business.
so as we have a few new volunteers who've recently retired, and they would like to get involved in some capacity, sharing their knowledge of having an HR background, an accounting background, a general business best practices background, so that they can support nonprofits in that way, how to better use different systems or processes for things, how to better organize your volunteer needs, your volunteers themselves, your tracking. Most organizations need to track their volunteers for their grant management. If they have received grants or funding in different ways, we have to report back on that. So what's the best way to do that? What's most effective to track that data? So there's a lot of volunteers that have those skills that can offer their time, and it can be as short as 5 hours a week, 5 hours a month, depending on what the need is and what the volunteers availability is. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to volunteering with this age, because many, especially on the younger end, they want to keep traveling, or they want to travel.
Oh yes.
They want to,
yes. All the
or
things.
spend time with family and with friends.
Yeah.
And volunteering allows them that flexibility. And in some cases, some of that work can be done remotely. So they can be in a different state or a different country, and they have access to Wi-Fi. They can get some work done.
And I love that you mentioned that, because that might be sometimes a hindrance for somebody who is just newly retired volunteering, that they don't want to get themselves, oh my gosh, I am required, I've committed myself to 5 hours a week, where I have to be there. But it can be very lenient. It can say, okay, for the next 3 weeks, I can do 5 hours, but then I'm gone for the next 6. And
Yeah.
that's just the luxury of volunteering too. And so
Yes.
it shouldn't stop somebody is the point. It should,
Yes. And
yeah.
that's a conversation I try to have with a volunteer who enrolls in our program is what is your time commitment,
Yeah.
week to week or through the month? Because some organizations do need regular
Mhm.
volunteers. Food pantries operate on a schedule, and they need to know that volunteers are going to come regularly. Every Monday from 10 to 12, these volunteers are here, or Tuesday, or whatever the days are. And there is some flexibility for somebody to come in and out. At the same time, they also need that consistency of the volunteer. So sometimes it's just presenting that to a volunteer so they think about, oh, right, this is an organization that relies on volunteers to meet their mission.
Mhm.
It's not loosey goosey.
Mhm.
My role is really important as a volunteer to help them meet their mission. So, having a new volunteer, think about what is my time commitment? How much time do I want to give? Some volunteers want to give 20 hours a week,
Mhm.
and some want to give 5. So as a volunteer, it's important to think about what is your commitment right now, and it can change. It can increase certain times of year, or it can decrease certain times of year, or it can change as you age. Maybe travel more in the beginning and travel less as you age, so you can do more volunteering. What you do may change too. You may be really active and ready to load up,
Yeah.
25-pound boxes when you're 55, 60 years old. And then after a while, you say, you know what? I've had enough of that. I'm going to do something that's not quite so physical.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities for all of those things to
So
do.
talking about opportunities, what if somebody does have transportation issues? And you kind of mentioned it, which I loved before, but I want to talk a little further. If they have transportation issues, if they do have mobility issues, what are some remote volunteer opportunities that are out there? Because I don't think people think about those either.
Yeah, there are opportunities to check in with folks. So, an organization like Meals on Wheels uses remote callers
Mhm.
to check in with the people that they deliver meals to. How are they doing? Are they getting needs met? Do they have a need? So, these remote callers are really vital in helping our our elderly population who is vulnerable at times, helping get their needs met.
Mm.
Um, there may be volunteer opportunities. We have even in our own center where we use volunteers on a remote basis where they don't have to come into our office to do things. They're able to help us out with different administrative roles or help us organize things. Um, so we've found that sometimes there are children or grandchildren of volunteers that can help them with transportation or just help them sometimes navigate. Not everybody is very tech savvy, kind of help them navigate the tech side. Um, and depending on communities, public transportation may or may not be a great solution to help people get to where they need to go to help volunteer. But there seem to be ways to figure it out and get that going and have a volunteer help find a place for a volunteer so that transportation isn't a barrier or getting somewhere is not a barrier to that person who wants to help serve in their community.
Yeah, awesome. So, what is kind of a final note if you are our volunteer guru of openly aging with Allison that you really want people to understand or that can really help people understand the importance of volunteering, but also the RSVP program, the AmeriCorps Senior RSVP program in general?
I, Volunteering is fun. And what I hear back too is that it is so rewarding. I've heard we work with a few different groups who support adults with different types of disabilities. And volunteers will tell me I always get so much more out of it than the people that I'm there serving. They're finding their community. And I think realizing as we age, it's not a popularity contest. It is about finding quality connections and building relationships with people of all backgrounds, people you may have never realized that you wouldn't have interacted with in any other way.
Mhm.
I think it also helps to see different types of life that we are in by supporting those that are in different types of need and capacity in that way. It builds a lot of empathy. I think it helps us have some grace for each other, and realize that we all have a story,
Mhm.
and and hearing those stories, it's just really cool. People have lived some pretty amazing lives, and providing dignity to support older adults as they age by volunteering to support their needs is really important.
Mhm.
And everybody deserves dignity.
100%. And so for the listeners, they can look up AmeriCorps Senior RSVP and find a
Um,
location near them.
they can, yes. So there are RSVP stations located throughout the United States. There's not necessarily one in every county represented, but you can go to AmeriCorps.gov and search the RSVP program. There are a few other senior programs I'll just mention, which are they do a companionship program for older adults as well as a foster grandparent
Okay.
program. So those are also other AmeriCorps senior programs. And then here locally in Durham County, we you can find us through the Triangle Nonprofit and Volunteer Leadership Center. Do even just do a Google search, I think, for finding volunteer opportunities
Yeah.
for people that want to help out in their community.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to working with you in our local area. And for the listeners, I cannot reiterate enough how social connection is one of the key components in staying in control and independent as you age. If we're not intentional about our social engagement, then it can all of a sudden not be there, and that can create problems as we age. So, for all the listeners, I hope that you maybe go out and find some volunteer opportunities or just start thinking, is my social engagement in the best place it can be? Or as I age, is my current social engagement realistic to stay the way it is? Or do I need to start making plans for continuing my social engagement as I age? So, thanks again to Amanda for joining us, and I'll see you next time on Openly Aging with Allison.